Hey everyone, today I'm going to be talking about what I read in May. I'm not going to use the term wrap-up anymore because frankly I've never been a particular fan of that term. I always think it sounds a bit odd, so that's it, I'm not using it again. May was a really good month. I read 12 books in total, which even for me is quite a lot. My average is about 8, maybe 9. So it's slightly better than normal. I'll talk about the books that I read as part of my SFF reading project first of all, and then I'll talk about the other books in the order that I read them. So, for the science fiction part of my SFF reading project, I read the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov. This comprises Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation. Now, I really enjoyed these books, quite simply. I gave the first one, Foundation, 5 stars, and the other two I gave 4 or 5 stars to. These are classic science fiction. Asimov is a very large name within science fiction. He's well known for both these books and indeed the Robots books as well. I, Robot, of course, being the most well known of them. And these were just really interesting, and there's some really interesting ideas in them. The idea, very simply, is that a man called Harry Seldon comes up with a new way to predict possible futures and possible future events using something called psychohistory. This uses basically mathematics of very large groups of people, billions ideally, if not hundreds of billions. And then the book's all about the events of something that he sets up called the Foundation, and their survival and their attempt to preserve the culture and the technology of the Empire, which is right on the verge of a collapse. He wants to minimise the time it takes between this Empire collapsing and the rise of a new one. It's a really interesting idea, and I liked the first one more, hence the 5 stars. It has a certain something about the first one that just really worked for me. I'm not sure what it is. The fantasy book that I read as part of my SFF reading project was A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is the Earthsea Quartet, which comprises 4 books, obviously. And the Wizard of Earthsea book itself I really enjoyed. I would give it 5 out of 5 stars. However, for the whole book, and indeed that's what I am rating, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, unfortunately, because the first one I really enjoyed, but that's the only one I enjoyed. The second, third and fourth felt very minor and insignificant in comparison, and it was a struggle to get through them, frankly. The idea of them is a kind of a traditional fantasy tale, although not entirely traditional, and it's based around a magician or magic user called Sparrowhawk, and he goes to a magic school, not exactly Harry Potter either, learns to be a great wizard, and then it is a series of adventures. It's a good book, but I'd recommend maybe just try and get the first book, Wizard of Earthsea, by itself though, because frankly I didn't enjoy the other 3, sadly. The next book I read was Magician's Gambit by David Eddings. This is the 3rd book in the Belgariad series. There are 5 of them in total. And yet again, as in the first 2, I've given this 4 out of 5 stars. It's a good fantasy book. It's quite traditional, and I suppose you could say it's kind of cliched, because it is a young boy coming of age tale. He comes into magical powers and he has to save the kingdom from a great evil with a band of mixed companions. But then again, what isn't cliche if you're looking at other examples to compare it to these days? I really enjoyed it. The writing was good and I like the characters. The characters are all good, fun characters, so I would recommend this to fantasy fans. The next book is Bad Luck and Trouble by Lee Child. This is the 11th Jack Reacher book. All the Jack Reacher books focuses on the character of Jack Reacher, who is an American ex-military policeman who wanders around America getting into situations, and then he has to get himself out of them using various investigative means. In this one, somebody or some people are killing members of his former military police unit, and obviously he wants to find out why, and indeed wants to find out if somebody is going to be attempting to murder him. Often somebody does try to murder him in most of the books, to be honest. They may be a little bit formulaic in some ways. Personally, I don't mind that because they are good, solid thrillers, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. The next book is Barking by Tom Holt. This is a humorous fantasy book about a lawyer called Duncan who specialises in death and taxes. He's in a job that he hates, and one day he's given the opportunity for a new job which he takes, and this new job isn't exactly what he had in mind, and without giving anything away, there are many fantastical creatures in the book. There are werewolves, hence the title, vampires, there's a unicorn, and there are zombies. On Goodreads there are many negative reviews of this. I didn't see that myself because I actually gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this a lot. I thought the writing was really good, the characters were odd but really good, and the mix between the normal London background and the fantasy elements and the sort of weird twists it takes to be quite clever actually. So I really enjoyed this. The next book is Creed by James Herbert. This is a horror book, and it is the first book ever I've read by James Herbert. This is an interesting book because the main character, who is called Creed, Joseph Creed, same first name as me, that is the only similarity between me and this main character. Because this main character is a London paparazzi. He's very unpleasant. He's a sexist, chauvinist. His views on things are not really nice, generally. He's the sort of person that you hate in most situations. And to be honest, you don't like him in the book. He is an interesting character for this reason though, because he's so frankly unlikable. And the plot of it is based around the simple idea of he is trying to take a photo of a celebrity in a graveyard one day, and he photographs something that he shouldn't do, and obviously there are various nasty supernatural things happen afterwards. It's a good solid book that I gave 4 out of 5 stars to, and I will definitely be reading more by James Herbert at some point. The next book that I read is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. This is the second book in the Wheel of Time series. There are 14 of them in total. This is a fantasy book, and Robert Jordan often gets compared to Tolkien because it does have a certain Tolkien feel to it. I'm no expert on Tolkien though, but even I can see a sort of resemblance to the world of Middle-earth. It is a slightly traditional, I suppose you'd call it, tale of a band of characters, the great evil in the world, and all these separate events in different parts of the world start conspiring and turning together, and I'm not entirely sure how it's going to end up yet. Obviously this is only the second out of 14 books, so there's a lot more going to happen yet. I'm not going to do a proper review of this, however, and frankly there's no need because a fellow booktuber, Caitlin, did a much better review than I could ever hope to do. So I will link her channel in the description below. She knows about these books really well and she really likes these books. So I would recommend you go and have a look at the videos on her channel to do with them, and indeed other videos. The next book is the only ebook I've read this month. I've read it on my Kindle, and that is Rough Magic by Kenny Soward. This is a steampunk fantasy and it is based around gnomes. The series that this is a part of is called the Gnome Saga. There's 3 of them in total. This is the first, obviously. I read this because of a review that Sunny did over on the Marvellous Reading Rooms channel, and this cost £1 at the time. It may well still cost £1 today. I really enjoyed it, and I'm grateful for Sunny for doing the review, because I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. The characters in it were the most standout part to me, because they were just really well written and well thought out, and the way they interact was just really clever, and the overall plot was quite interesting as well. They have really interesting elements to them that I thought were quite original in some ways. The penultimate book that I read was A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. This is a science fiction dystopian told from the point of view of the main character, Alex, in a really nasty, brutal version of London, where gangs are really prevalent, and he and his fellow droogs, or gang members, there are 3 of them in total, other than him, go out of an evening as a hobby and just as a casual thing, and go and beat people up, rape women, and generally are really nasty and pretty twisted actually. He's not a particularly nice character at the start of the book, and I can't talk more about what happens because I would give away massive plot points, but the psychology of the book and the way that you get to know Alex from a very internal point of view, it's all in his head, I thought was really fascinating, because what he goes through and the way he tries to manipulate other people, people try to manipulate him, and the interactions can be really quite fascinating. I also watched the film of this as well only a few days ago. That was directed by Stanley Kubrick, and I wouldn't exactly say I loved the film as such. I mean, I'm glad I watched it, but it was very dark and very nasty like the book is, but in a slightly different way, because in the book these horrible things are described, but you don't truly get a certain picture of them, so you can see them in a different light. Indeed, the psychology is slightly different. The film, the nasty scenes that are described in the book, obviously because it's visual, are very nasty indeed, and there's a few scenes in the film that I was barely able to watch. I was kind of half turning my head away from them because it really was quite disturbing, the film. I'm glad I watched the film. I never plan to watch it again. I may well read the book again though, because the book isn't as disturbing in that way that it makes me not want to read it again. Oh, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads if I didn't say. And for the final book, I wanted something a bit more lighter and cheerful than A Clockwork Orange. So I read a humorous book about cats. Yeah. The Unadulterated Cat by T. Pratchett and Gray Jolliffe. This is a very small hardback book, and Gray Jolliffe is the illustrator. All the pictures in it are of cats, like for instance those, and it's just a book about what it means to be a cat and the definition of cats in general and how they live and such. It sounds odd, and indeed it is an odd book because it's not a proper big reading book as such. It's sort of book that you just pick up, indeed that's what I used it for. Picked it up, read it, looked at the pictures. It amused me because of course, yeah, T. Pratchett is the author, so it has the same humour as in the Discworld, and I did like it. However, I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because there's not exactly a lot to it. It's just a interesting little diversion of a book really, rather than a full-on in-depth book. I wouldn't recommend buying this at full price. Maybe see if you can get it for cheaper, or obviously from a library. I mean, it's well worth reading, and it's very good if indeed you have just read a more intense book, which obviously I had. So with that said, that's pretty much it for the book. So I've had a good month, as you can see, and I really enjoyed all the books that I've read. Some of them were average, some of them were way above average. If you've read any of these books, let me know and tell me what you think, and then we can have a good talk about them. I'm always interested to know what other people think. My social media links of Twitter and Goodreads can be found in the description box below, along with links to the people that I mentioned as well. And with that said, that is it for this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you another day. Bye for now.